This is a panel. Obviously, we don't really have a place for a panel to sit up here right now, so they're all going to come up one by one. But I'm going to do quick introductions here at the beginning. We have 5 steering group members that are here to talk to us today about the state of DSpace. First up will be David Lewis from Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, and he's our chair of the steering group. We'll have Maureen Walsh from the Ohio State University, who's on the steering group, also one of the co-chairs of DCAT, the DSpace Community Advisory Team. Lieven Droogmans from Atmeyer, who will be talking about some of the interactions with service providers, also in the steering group. Michele Mennielli from Jamaica, and Jonathan Markow from DuraSpace. So I'm going to hand it over to David and go ahead and get us started. That's it.
Okay. Can everyone hear me in the back? We're good? So for those of you who are literarily inclined, today is Bloomsday. I'm sure James Joyce person, and so spending it in Dublin is kind of fun. So I want to talk pretty briefly about governance, budget, and membership. And I think DSpace is at a really interesting point right now as a community. Over the last couple of years, we have made some serious attempts to try to bring the governance structure in line so that we can be more strategic about the development of the platform. And I think we are at a place where that is beginning to pay off some very important results. So this is the governance structure. And actually, there's another layer at the bottom of this platform, which is all of the people who use DSpace, but who are not members of DSpace through DuraSpace. The leadership group is made up of people who make significant or more significant contributions to the financial or personnel contributions to the project. The steering group, which sort of manages the month-to-month developments, is an elected group, elected by the leadership group. And then we have a variety of working groups and task force like groups out there. The technology team and DCAT are probably the most important, but we had a group that did a lot of work on marketing, which is an important piece to the project right now. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is what the governance structure looks like. This is the current steering group, and it's a pretty diverse group geographically. And the people who are slightly are not bolded are people who will be cycling off of the steering committee. So we'll have an election shortly to fill in those positions. So we'll look at 3 new people on the steering group. Anybody from the project can nominate people. So if you know of people who have the time and energy to commit to trying to manage the project, who you think could contribute, I would encourage you all to nominate them. The election will be done by the leadership group or the people who do the selection. And this is the current leadership group. Some of us are in the room, so you can twist our arms if you have candidates for the leadership group you want to push forward. One of the things we did is we put together a vision and mission statement. It's a nice thing to have and be able to make sure that we're focused. And I think that it's useful, from my perspective anyway, in the United States to assert that we are the world's choice for repository software. In the United States particularly, there is some competition arising. I think it's not a secret that the Hydra box people would like to eat our lunch if they thought they could get away with it. And I think it's our job to make sure that that doesn't happen. This is the mission. I think that the DSpace community has some really incredible strengths that I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of. It's a really diverse worldwide community of people who make contributions to the software. We have a group of registered service providers who are worldwide and make significant contributions to the project. This differentiates us from everyone else who's here at this conference today, this week. So I think that really is an advantage of the project, and we need to sort out how to leverage that as the best of our ability. This is familiar, I think, to most people who have been around. It's really describing the characteristics that we value in the code. So I think over the last couple of years, we've put in place this governance structure with good geographic representation. One of the key issues that we have is increasing the financial membership of the project. Right now, the project budget is approximately, well, I'll get to the details, but we can afford Tim, but just barely. And we actually don't even buy all of Tim's time. So it's important for us, if we're going to be able to coordinate this project, to be able to raise some additional funding, and we're beginning to start to think about how to do that. I thought it was an example of why that's really important. I suspect many of you might have seen the presentation yesterday from the Chinese group who have their version of DSpace, which they call C-Space, which is a fork in the code. And they've done some really powerful things that it would be useful to integrate into the standard DSpace. But coordinating that effort is not simple. And we currently really are pressed to try to even think about how to do that. Having said that, we've made some really significant progress on a technical roadmap. And the first piece of that is the new user interface. As you all know, we've been developing the project with 2 user interfaces. This is, in my view, a waste of effort. So I think that this integration around a single user interface, which will be modern and more powerful, I think is a really important step. It will take us a year to a year and a half to get there, but I think it's a really key first step in this. So here's the project budget, so you'll know what's going on. The project costs about it spends about $300,000 in real money. We raised about $250,000 from memberships, and then we get some additional funding from service providers. And over the last several years, DuraSpace has contributed to the project from the general funds that they collect. So a number of people joined DuraSpace without specifying where their dollars would go. And so we've gotten a little bit of that money in the past couple of years. The largest expenditure or salary costs, some of this goes to support the general activities of DuraSpace, and a chunk of it goes to support Tim. He doesn't get all of that salary. If he did, he'd have to work harder. So where we are with the dilemma of the project, as I see it right now, from a bureaucratic or administrative perspective, is that we have approximately 2,000 member users, installations that we're aware of. And those are clustered really in sort of US and Europe, and then the rest of the world almost evenly. But membership is largely North American based in terms of people who contribute cash to the project. And as I said earlier, there is, I think, an inevitable diminishing of that resource. Lots of particularly larger institutions in the United States who run both DSpace and Fedora seem to think that they can get away from the DSpace part of it and make Fedora do everything. So I think we'll see some diminishing of the cash resources we get from the US. We get some cash from Europe, but not as much as we would hope. In the United States, we get most of our memberships from individual institutions. In Europe, that's a little more difficult, and the organizations are often national or regional, and we need to figure out how to have conversations with those people to get some financial contribution. For the rest of the world, we've only had a very small number of members, and it's variable. Several years ago, we had a membership at the highest level from the education ministry in Brazil, which was really a good thing for us. Unfortunately, the economy in Brazil tanked, and then they were gone. They had no money. So we really need to rely on North America and Europe, and maybe to a lesser extent Australia and New Zealand for the cash. But right now, we're not getting that. We get a lot of contribution in terms of code out of Europe, but not enough money. this is another look at that piece. So I think the key piece for us now is to try to figure out where we can, who we need to talk to, who is using DSpace in order to be able to bring the community together. Again, to look at what the Chinese have done. So a number of people had conversations with them yesterday. They're interested in working to bring the code back together. If we can do that, then that's obviously, that coordination is really hard. And there are lots of other people all over the place who are doing interesting things, but we don't really know about all of it as well as we should, and we don't know how to bring it back together as well as we should. So that limits our ability to advance. So I think that from an administrative perspective is the real challenge of DSpace right now. Thank you. Maureen.
Morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you. I'm Maureen Walsh from United States University Libraries, and as Tim mentioned, I'm one of the co-chairs of the DSpace Community Advisory Team for DCAT. Lieven is here as well. He's the other co-chair. So I'm just going to briefly talk about DCAT and some of the things we worked on in the past year, and just a brief overview. We have been around for a while, but we realized that when we throw around the word DCAT or the acronym DCAT, it may not be obvious to everyone who's maybe newer to the community what we're talking about or who we are or how you can get involved. So this is just a really brief introduction to DCAT. So we do represent the interests of repository managers and administrators around the world, and indirectly DSpace end users. We're primarily made up of individuals who function as repository managers at their institutions, people who are interested in advancing the development of DSpace software and growing the community base. We do aim to have a global representation in order to provide broad support to our user community, and I think we do have a very good representation internationally, but that's something that we are always looking to grow and support. So just want to talk briefly about some of the things that we do, why we exist. We are a permanent working group. David was showing the governance structure, and there was the working groups off to the left. We are a permanent working group, and we do serve to advise the project governance and leadership groups. So we do provide recommendations to DSpace steering and leadership groups. And we're providing a DCAT perspective and a community perspective via the community that we can solicit feedback from, either with open discussions or with surveys that we've done in the past. We also provide recommendations to the DSpace committers. We are a resource for the committers when they're working on new features, when they're working on new releases. They may, in a JIRA ticket say, we would like to ask DCAT about this. This is something that we can then get together and talk about to provide the DCAT perspective from repository managers and users. Some of the things that we do as a group, we share knowledge and best practices among the members themselves, but we also hope to, by extension, share knowledge and best practices to the entire user community. We do work on special projects. Some of those are directed by steering or the committers or another working group that may be formed that needs input from the community or would like input from the community, would like perspective from repository managers or from users, and that's the best way to use. Still hear me? Can you still hear me? Okay, great. So we do work on special projects, and we have a monthly open conference call. So we meet the second Tuesday of every month, not this week, because we're here. So we're all meeting in person. people that are here. But the call is open, so anyone can join the call. And we do archive our meeting summaries, and the topics, the agendas are open on our wiki page. So if you're interested in providing feedback, if you would like to hear what we're talking about, if you would like to get involved, those calls are open. So some of the recent call topics, just in case you're wondering what we talk about, a lot of our calls will be focused on, at least part of them, talking about where we are in specific projects or specific activities, the touch base. A lot of that work with the projects happens offline, but we do touch base in the monthly calls. But we also try to have different topics, invited speakers or invited people for different topics. So recent topics we've talked about, one was on ORCID. We did go over the fundamentals of the modern institutional repository use case. This seems to come up quite frequently, so we continually touch base to see if we're all on the same page, especially with the work with the roadmap going forward. One of the calls was about OAR PMH, and we had Friedrich Suman from Dave Search join our call. RIOX, if you were in the presentation about RIOX, we had a call about, is this something for UK only, or is there a wider interest? And again, all of those call summaries are available on our wiki page. And of course, the DSpace 6 testathon was a big topic for us, and I'll go over that a little bit. So one of our most recent projects was working on the testathon testing plans that DCAT developed. And I would, really want to give special thanks to everyone who worked on this. It was a lot of work. It was systematic planning for the testing plans in both XMLUI and JSPUI. They are available. They are in Google Docs. It is our hope that repository managers or other institutions who are looking for testing plans can take these and use them at your own institution. You can modify them. Each area is very well described. We have 4 different roles, so testings for administrators, for anonymous users, for submitters, for collection administrators. So a lot of work went into that, and I think it was very helpful for the committers and the release team for DSpace 6. So it was also something that we wanted to do to give back to the community to help you with your own upgrades. So with that, I just want to say thank you on behalf of Graham and I for all of your involvement with the community. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to know how to get more involved, or if you just want to talk to us, Graham and I are both here. Graham, want to raise your hand? You can get in contact with us, and we'd love to have you join our team and to talk with you, or if you would like to join our calls, see what they're like. They're at 15 or 16, sorry about that. 15 or 16 GMT, they're at 11 Eastern time. So thank you very much. Forgot to mention, we also have a mailing list. It's a Google list that anyone can join if you would like to be on our mailing list as well.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. As a representative of one of the larger DSpace service providers, I've been asked to talk a little bit about what registered service providers actually are and what we do for the community. And as David already emphasized, DSpace is one of the only projects with a lot of service providers. First of all, everybody probably knows what a service provider is. It's just a company that provides a commercial service for the DuraSpace software that they provide services for. And they often have a local presence or at least experience that is relevant to the client in a particular region or in their country. What is maybe not so much known is what it means to be a registered service provider. So a registered service provider actually signs an agreement with DuraSpace that is a mutually beneficial agreement where both the service provider and DuraSpace benefits from. that relationship. So, and that's something that's been put in place since 2010. So we've been a registered service provider as Admire since 2010 for 6 years. So commercial services, everybody knows what commercial services could be. This is just a small list: installation, support, hosting, consulting, development, training. There's so many other services you can provide for your clients as a registered service provider. So as David already pointed out, this is a big difference between DSpace, Fedora, and Vivo. So DSpace currently has RSPs in 10 different countries. And as you can see here, dispersed all over the world. You have service providers in South America, in the US, in Europe, in Asia. And Vivo has 2 RSPs, and Fedora currently only has 1 registered service provider. So why are service providers important for the project? First of all, there is a financial contribution from the service providers. So most of the service providers contribute roughly 1% of their revenue on an annual basis to the project. As you've seen in the profit and loss statement that David has shown this slide, this represents about 11% of the project revenue for DSpace. We all would like to see that grow. We all want more service providers to start up, and there have been some new service providers, one in Germany, the library code by Pascal Becker, who is also a committer on DSpace. So it is important for the DSpace community to leverage this benefit and to have service providers not only contribute financially, but also in other ways. So other ways that service providers can contribute is by promoting DSpace. So assisting DuraSpace in local events, in events that are only in a specific country, and to really help DuraSpace market DSpace and show the capabilities of DSpace. And then finally, what I personally think is one of the most important things is being an active contributor. You can do that as a service provider in many different ways. You can test, as Maureen showed with DCAT, involved in the testing laws, creating test plans, resolving bugs, new feature development, writing proper documentation for DSpace, facilitating new release as Kevin did for DSpace 6 on behalf of Admire. And if you look at, okay, it's not a perfect list, of course. I look at the lines of code that were contributed by people in GitHub to the DSpace project. Of course, code is not the perfect metric. Commits is also not the perfect metric, but this gives you an idea of what the involvement of service providers is in the contribution of code to DSpace. So if you see here in the top 20 contributors, 45% or even a little bit more than 45% come from RSPs. I do have to note that some of the people on this list at some point were working at an institution, so not their entire amount of lines of code come from their work at the RSP. But even if they were at an institution and then later moved to an RSP, to keep contributing and stay active in the community, it shows the importance of an RSP as well. So you can see that on the GitHub page for DSpace. So, and why do I believe that it's very important for an RSP to contribute back to the community? I mean, if you imagine a traditional software company, like let's take a big example like Facebook, what do they invest a lot in? And that's their core product, right? So their platform, their website, and they make huge investments in that platform. In a more open world and open source environment, sometimes that's not really understood by all companies, I think. And I really believe that for Admire, DSpace is our core technology. And if it's our core technology, we really need to invest in improving that core technology. So I believe that the community development for an RSP is essential research and development that every RSP needs to put a lot of effort in. But of course, the problem there is also that it requires at least involvement and input from the community, right? Because you don't want service providers to just implement what they want in the software, and we want people from the community to be involved. One example is the UI proof of concept that Tim demoed so nicely yesterday. So as Tim pointed out, there were 9 prototypes submitted. But out of those 9, 5 were developed by RSPs, and then 1 was developed by DuraSpace. So that means that there were only 3 other prototypes prototypes that came from the community. And I mean, RSP's contributed 354 hours of development to get the proof of concept right after the prototyping. And I believe that that is proper, that the service providers put a lot of effort in the actual implementation. But it is very important for us and everyone here that in the prototyping, when the ideas are being discussed and talked about, and when preliminary decisions are being made, that there is a lot of involvement and input from the entire community, from users, from all other contributors. So, that being said, I was really trying to convince everyone to be more involved, even though that you can't necessarily contribute code if you're, for example, not familiar with Angular, that's not a problem. But at least being involved in the discussions and trying to help steer the direction would really help service providers and DuraSpace. So I'll hand it over to Michele for the marketing interest group.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Lieven.
Can you hear in the back?
Now, is it better? Good, thanks. So thank you, Lieven. And as I said, we're going to briefly talk about this marketing interest group, which was kind of an interesting group also, as well, I would say. As everything within DuraSpace, and especially DSpace, it was a collaborative activity. We started working on this new group back in April 2015 after a request from the steering group. And actually, as Lieven pointed out at the beginning, we needed to start really understanding what DSpace was going through and was going through. And the only way we had to do so was actually start analyzing what was going on. So the main goals of the interest group, of the marketing interest group, was the growing number of members and users, because actually the community is what we are. And we're both members and users, to try to increase the participation of the users and the members. Each also, as Lieven was pointed out now, each of us can contribute back to the community in some way, somehow. So we needed to understand how we could try to push this participation, to strengthen this collaboration. Why let start the usage of DSpace? Because actually we don't really know what's going on around the world. We know that there are, as David showed at the beginning, there are many more users than members and many more users than contributors. So the thing is, people are working on DSpace, but we cannot know what they're doing. Yesterday we saw a very interesting presentation from the Chinese institutions. They were contributing and enhancing the system a lot, but without being, contributing back to the core of DSpace. And this is something that we need to change. To change that, we need to engage with them. So this is the engagement with the international community we're looking for, and Jonathan will talk about it later. So after a few months of activity, in October we published a document. It's more than 30 pages document of analysis of the status of DSpace, and it's mainly 3 points: analysis, strategy, and action plan. The action plan is just suggestions, as you will see later. I just pick up some of the results of this analysis. As you can see, the installations per country. Most of the installations are in the US, but if you sum all of the others around the world, you reach almost 2,000 installations, pretty spread all over. The membership by country, mainly they come from the US, and this might be an issue because 1,000 installations outside, more than 1,000 installations outside the US without a very good number of membership, there's something wrong. We are not relating with the whole community. Of course, most of the members besides the US come from Europe, and also the coding, as we saw, and mainly come from Europe, the contributions by the members of the US. Then the value of the kind of membership. Most of the memberships are bronze membership, of course, but the weight in the overall budget of DSpace it's somehow similar for all the membership. And then, of course, we try to analyze the work and SWOT analysis. Those are just some of the ideas we discussed with this group, and of course, all of those ideas were also discussed with the steering group and the leadership group. The strengths of DSpace, we all know that the community is the biggest strength that we have. The collaborative activity is the big community. The global distribution, having the possibility to get feedbacks from all over the world, work on that together, it's a very huge strength. It's an open source, it's out of the box. The rapid evolution of DSpace, which is somehow related to the weaknesses, because as you can see, the first one is the perception. How DSpace is perceived by the community. Are we sending out the right message? The aging code base, and now, as you know, we are working really hard to do many changes in the next few years, and the next few years will be pretty challenging for the DSpace community. There will be changes in the user interface, there will be changing in the new releases that will be coming out pretty soon. But the most important things here are the opportunities and threats. Some of the threats were already mentioned by David at the beginning of this presentation, but the opportunities are a lot. Of course, there are a lot, and they come from the discussions that we've been having for the past 4 days here. There were tons of ideas we could work on. One of the first discussions we had on Monday is all the quiz work. How do we address it? Shouldn't we? And so somehow we still need to dig into this space and dig into the strengths and opportunities. For this, of course, we need engagement of the community. How we would suggest to have this kind of engagement? We propose the creation of 5 different working groups within the DSpace community. One to address the mission and vision statement, which was actually led by Lieven and resulted in the vision and mission statement that you saw at the beginning. The DSpace Stories working group led by Carol, Lieven, and we started interviewing users of DSpace around the world to share their experience, no matter if they're members or not. They just needed to let their voice be heard by the rest of the community. Engaging with the community, which is different from the increase in the membership, because the community is the core part of DSpace. So how we're going to do so? We need, of course, we already have some tools, but we need, of course, your participation, your efforts in this, and increased membership. Mostly, our goal would be to do so internationally. For these gentlemen, we'll briefly talk about it. But for all of those working groups, as I said, we need your participation. You can read more of the information and the analysis we need at this link. And if you want to be part of it, if you want to contribute to one of the working groups, you will be very, very welcome. So thank you very much, and that is it.
Hello, can you hear me? Good? Okay. So I want to touch on some of the key strategic directions of DSpace. Now, most of these things have been covered, and I'm going to move quickly through them. Before I do that, though, I just wanted to say something about competition in the repository marketplace. So, and of course, we all expect competition from the commercial vendors. But in fact, there is what I think healthy competition among the open source repository communities. Of course, we're more cooperative with one another than the commercial vendors. But I think that and speaking as someone from DuraSpace, we sometimes get questions, isn't it a little weird that you're providing services and support for, Fedora and DSpace, and you're working very closely with Hydra now, and you promote the work of the Island Door Foundation. Isn't that weird? And our position really is that each of these products has something unique to offer and attractions and things that they do very well, things that that attract users to them and developers to them, different technologies, whether it's DSpace's, DSpace, touts, I think, justifiably its out-of-the-box nature. I mean, it just works, and it's the most widely deployed repository for open access in the world. Fedora's complexity, its capability to model complex objects and relationships is something that is very useful to many users. Hydra's Ruby on Rails platform, very attractive to a number of developers. So these are all, I think, various strengths that each of the repository has. I think in DuraSpace we want to make an effort to do more clarification among these products, to make it easier for people who are coming to our world with a desire to really figure out what's the best choice for me. We want to make it easier for them to understand what are some of the strengths, the individual strengths and characteristics of these different platforms. Since I'm speaking today as a member representing the DSpace steering committee, I can confidently tell you that DSpace is the best. Just kidding. Okay, one major strategic thrust that we have is to follow the yellow brick roadmap. We have a roadmap, and we went through quite an extensive process to create this roadmap, and it was based on extensive feedback from the community. The DCAT group went through and cataloged in a series of polls open calls with the community, a number of use cases, different groups within the community went through the process of prioritizing the use cases. And so we do have a roadmap. You're seeing it acted upon right now with the initiative to do the new DSpace UI, which is really key to the whole thing, because it doesn't make sense, we can't make the progress we want to make by supporting two UIs. And every subsequent thing that we do, DSpace, we want it to be done with a unified UI, because that's going to help us move a lot faster. But if you want to see the complete roadmap, that's the link to it. And, the roadmap is a living document. There are developments since we published this roadmap that have made us, really consider, well, there are some new and interesting things we can take advantage of for DSpace in the future. Let's see how those things fit into the roadmap. Triple IFP, that's certainly one of them. So take a look at that roadmap. It's key to the project's progress, and the fact that we have a roadmap and it's a published roadmap, and that it does reflect the views of everyone who had a say in forming the roadmap is really significant. The technology refresh is another key strategic initiative. So Why is it important? Well, because true or not, DSpace has had over the past few years a perception in the community of having aging technology. And the fact is that now the considerations that people have gone through and the planning that people have gone through is really going to bring DSpace technology into the forefront. I mean, JavaScript is the future of the web. And the decision to proceed with the Angular 2 framework is really significant. It's going to result in some extremely dynamic interactive interfaces. On the server side, the focus on the REST API is a real significant decision. It's going to facilitate all kinds of new integrations. It's going to make design a lot more easy, by separating UI design from the back end. It's going to make it possible for UI designers to play a more significant role. It's going to make it possible for local installations of DSpace who want to do some customizing in another language to be able to take advantage of that. And the fact that we're going to be building on Spring, the use of Spring Boot on the server also will provide a solid framework. The work that's been done on the UI has been, the prototype that the group is working on, has been done in a format that we call managed sprints. So they've been basically 1 week periods, although probably 2 weeks or longer. It would be more practical in some cases. But basically, these are more focused activities and group moderated activities that move the project along. And Tim really wants to continue with that kind of organizational framework, moving ahead to the actual building of the prototype and the work that we do on the server side as well. So you'll be hearing more about that from him. And we're hoping to have as much participation from the developers out there who want to take part in the process. So more about that in future weeks. The interest group and the working group format for getting work done is very useful. It's been useful in a number of our projects and many open source initiatives around the world. So and Michele told you a little bit about the marketing, about the working groups that were recommended by the marketing interest group. So what's the difference between an interest group and a working group? Basically, if you have a specific interest in a topic and you want to work with others in the community in discussing it and maybe making some plans to move forward with getting work done, then you might want to be part of an interest group. So, for example, an interest group might be image handling, improving image handling in DSpace. It should be possible for anyone in the community who has some colleagues, who wants to attract colleagues with a similar interest, to form a group like that. And there doesn't need to be a central sort of roadblock to doing it. And we want to be able to facilitate interest groups to form spontaneously if folks want to do that, get together and talk about common issues, just on a more narrow topics than other groups are accustomed to. A working group often spins off from an interest group. A working group has a finite deliverable that they want to accomplish and deliver to the community. So very often, most often it will involve some sort of coding process, although it might come up with some sort of specification or document. And the working groups are limited in time, but also they're designed to attract anyone in the community who wants to take part in the work. And for each of these kinds of groups, we have a charter that the facilitator, the leader of the group, will fill out, just a one-page document that says what's the purpose, if it's a working group, what are the deliverables, if it's an interest group, what are the topics. And we want to spread the word about these more so we can spin up more of these groups in the community and get more participation, discussion happening, and more work done. Finally, international partnerships really have to be a big initiative for the DSpace project. So everyone who spoke prior to me really emphasized the fact that we have a lot of activity happening out in how many countries, are using DSpace? Only 120. But there's an awful lot happening out there, and there are people who are working and doing amazing, sophisticated work internally in their country using their native language and getting amazing work done, but they have very little connection with the rest of us, with the DSpace project, either the governance groups or the developer groups. And often we do get contributions from developers in some of these countries that are contributed towards the release, which is great. But what we'd really like to see is more collaboration up front. We'd like to hear about these efforts early. We'd like to have discussion about them. We'd like to have questions like, we're going to be working on, this sub-project. Who else is interested in working with us? We'd like to see more of that kind of collaboration going on. We'd like to see more support for reviewing the work that gets done out there and submitted, because that's really a roadblock now. We need more support to get that review done and feedback done. And so we really need to reach out to these communities. And the best way to do that is to have a presence, really to have a presence in some of these places. So it's really our intent to do whatever we can to forge relationships with some of the European groups that support the work that we're all doing, some of the national groups, and some of the individual institutions out there in the countries where significant work is being done. And this is happening all over right now, but we need to, and we're beginning to focus on starting up these relationships with groups like Open Air and DuraSpace and some of the South American groups that are working now on DSpace. And so this is a trend we want to really continue this year. It's very important to get the larger community involved. And if I may say something, the way to do this is to really increase membership in DuraSpace that's directed to the DSpace project, because it takes funding to travel, to have a presence in other parts of the world. It's not millions of dollars, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it does take funds to do that. And we need the support of DSpace users out there. If you're in an institution if you're with an institution that's a DSpace user committed to DSpace and is getting a lot out of DSpace, but you're not yet a member, please try to persuade leadership at your institution to consider membership. And so there's a link there below. And so at this point, I think that's pretty much it for major strategic directions. So I'll turn it back over to Tim. Thanks.
Okay, so we do have about 15 minutes here. I would like to invite the steering group members. Maybe we can turn to steering here after
Let's stay.
Stand? Okay, that's fine. I'm also up here as well, purposefully. So if you have questions, comments, ways you think we should be interacting more with the international community, other sorts of thoughts, I think this is a great opportunity to really start to brainstorm where we go next. Is that
I'll suggest, since we only have this one mobile mic, we'll ask you to shout out your questions, and then we'll repeat your question before we.
questions, comments? Oh, come on, I couldn't have been that clear. I think one thing, yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a group working on usability, particularly from the repository workers' point of view, or ideally from the end users who are going to be accessing all this wonderful content?
Okay, so the question was, do we have a group that's working on accessibility, usability, or more accessibility, either one?
Or usability.
More usability? Okay.
Yeah.
So do we have a group working on that? The answer is not yet, but I'd love to have one. So that's one thing I was actually just going to stress, but Jonathan mentioned there in terms of interest groups and working groups, there is an opportunity for people in the community to band together and let's just create more of these working groups and interest groups dynamically in a fashion where we can just have folks come together around a common interest, give feedback to us on very specific topics, especially the DCAT, to the committers, and allow us to make more headway on that. Obviously, we can't have everything flow directly through myself, being the main central person, and I'd love to have other people involved and pull you all in to create these groups. So I'd love to see an interest, if there's folks who are interested in that, I mean, let's see if we can create one. I think that'd be wonderful. And that goes for any other topic too, like IIIF was mentioned a couple times as well. That would be a good interest group or a working group to start to figure out how we can start to move that forward for DSpace, any other sort of topic you can think of. Other comments or questions? Or anybody over here have something nice in the audience? Time for coffee. Do any of you have any questions you want to talk about? Anything else to stress?
I would just say for the question about usability, particularly with the new user interface, that's really key. So I think there's an opportunity around what's coming next to get engaged with that. So I think that's relevant.
Yeah, and I will say, actually, if you're specifically interested in that, I had a couple institutions already talk to me about, oh, we might have a usability expert, or somebody can kind of help out with that. And maybe we could kind of pull together a group of these people to try and help us move this forward much more quickly than maybe one individual would at one institution. So if you are interested in that specifically, I can help maybe see if we can coordinate something to get these folks together and tie together so you can kind of help us move this forward much more rapidly. Graham, did you?
There may be one comment rather than a question. For the upcoming DCAT meetings that are taking place monthly as an open conference call, we do not yet have fixed agendas yet for the calls for the upcoming months. So we very much are open to suggestions for topics that you want to discuss, either with maybe DSpace 6 or 7, but also really we're open to discussions about the things that are for users, really basic, like best practices for customizing submission forms, metadata profiles, or anything that you might want to talk about with your peers.
Sure.
Sorry to stop off your comment. Just came to me, a few people have mentioned the movement to merge get some of DSpace's functionality onto Fedora, and you were speaking about that. We may not have time to do this now, but I wonder if you could just say a little bit about the pros and cons of that, because there's a little bit of that alliance to do.
Yes, the question was around is it more of an integration between DSpace and Fedora, or you're talking about putting DSpace and Fedora
What
together?
you were saying, we have Fedora and DSpace, and there's a move to let's amalgamate them.
Okay, so
Yeah, I think there is, with administrators like me, a sense that you ought to have one tool that does everything. You need a Swiss Army knife. I think I would argue that, a good hammer and a good pair of pliers are useful separately. But I think that there's a sense among administrators that DSpace is somewhat old technology, and that Fedora and Hydra are coming up. I think that's not as true as the story is often told. But I do think that the threat that we have is that that sense will erode financial support, particularly in the United States. So I think to the extent that all of you can encourage your administrators to think differently about that problem, that would be a useful thing. Is that responsive?
Yes, it's a bit of a double line, because what we're saying is, well, what our administrators are saying is, we need to save money, and you're saying we need to save money, or you need to keep getting money.
Yeah, and I'm an administrator, I understand that dilemma, but I think if you scale back, if your institution is at one level and your politics of the institution are such you have to scale back that membership, staying engaged even at a lower level is useful to the extent that that can be managed. And using the tool as long as we can in a place I think is useful too, because I think DSpace will get significantly better pretty quickly. And I think staying engaged long enough to demonstrate that will be important.
I think the roadmap will be user voices.
Yeah, I think the new UI and I think some things will come quickly after that.
And I will also stress, actually, there's an opportunity there for a potential another interest group for folks who are using both DSpace and Fedora and want to continue to use them in parallel for different purposes. And whether you have Islandora or Hydra or whatever on your Fedora, and you have DSpace for your IR, and finding ways to allow the systems to work better together based on specific use cases you have at your institution. I think that would be a wonderful interest group that would be supported by DSpace in general as well, or DuraSpace in general as well.
I think that maybe we should have a definite page about what is DSpace and what is Fedora.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a lot of myths that are going around in the community about perceptions, and mostly perceptions. I think we need to really have a definitely technical page on what is the advantage of using Fedora together with DSpace and vice versa, and what's not provided by one solution or the other one. Because if we don't have that, and the technical group in DSpace is the only one who can do it, in a professional way. I think if we don't have that, there's a lot of myth going on in the community, and we can solve them.
Yeah, so I think that's good feedback for any DuraSpace in general. I know we've been trying to communicate out the benefits of each of our products much more clearly, even on our website.
And it should get analysis.
Better.
Yeah. It should get analysis. Because there's a lot of cases where DSpace would be really enough to fulfill the needs of a specific community or institution, but they would adopt Fedora on top of that because we don't know. I think we should investigate a bit more of that. And another suggestion I was discussing a little bit between Lieven and so on, was maybe it would help the DSpace community to have provide configuration to download. When you download the software, you have to do a lot of work on configuration. And maybe it would be easier to have specific download packages that already have a flavor for, say, focus on preservation, focus on the institutional repository, focus on another specific use case that allows them to have an easier start time with a configuration that is already sort of profiled. And maybe the community could be involved in this, making a working group on defining which configuration is more useful for a museum, which configuration is more useful for a find their own solutions and maybe drop the idea of using DSpace because they don't know how to put it on.
Right, okay, so there was a lot Susan just commented on. I'm not sure everybody can hear that in the back pretty well, but I think those are great points. Just talking about potentially creating different flavors of DSpace in terms of configuration so that you can see the different use cases of DSpace for different needs in your institution. Talking more about how clarifying the use cases between DSpace and Fedora and how and why you would want to use DSpace in certain scenarios and maybe have it interact with Fedora in other scenarios. Or however we put just clarifying the message there so that we can make it clear what DSpace can actually achieve, which is why it's so massive and why it's so big worldwide, because there is a lot that it can achieve. So I think those are all great comments there. Are we out of time here? Yeah, we've got 2 more minutes here. It's quick.
Yeah, I just had a question for people who are using both DSpace and Fedora. And I was just wondering what the use case is for using DSpace and what you're using DSpace for and what you're also using Fedora for.
So, yeah, I'm not sure if that, does anybody here want to come? I don't know if anybody here is actually.
Maybe someone from the audience
Yeah.
wants to answer. The question was, for people who are using both DSpace and Fedora, why are you doing it? What are you doing? What are you doing with DSpace that's different from what you're doing with Fedora? Anyone want to respond to that?
Yeah, we have a cultural heritage repository.
Maybe we'll pass the mic to you, and then we'll have to end the session. So we'll have to ask you to make it brief.
Sure. Yeah, we have a cultural heritage repository for our digital library on Fedora, and it also has research data and on DSpace, an institutional open access repository.
And I would say, just from hearsay, that's a similar sort of situation I've heard, is that DSpace is the true open access institutional repository, and then maybe there's something that they want to handle in a different fashion, maybe using Fedora, but we're trying to before.
So that's kind of the main use case I've heard. But thank you very much.